Appeals, Judge Hendricks not issuing the order. Washington, D.C. federal court not issuing the order. Yes, the Trump regime is saying that they're not going to send these migrants until they get a habeas corpus proceeding, unless there's some due process. We don't trust them. You got to issue an order, Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, because this may go down immediately. They may be sent to the concentration camps. What did the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals do? Nothing. They didn't respond. They basically ignored it and didn't address it on an emergency basis. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal, it should be noted, is a very right-wing court of appeal. I think everybody is a Trumper or a George W. Bush appointee, all right-wing justices. So this is why the Trump regime wants to try to get all of the jurisdiction for these migrants in Texas, because they think they get better judges there than judges in other areas in the country. So when the Fifth Circuit doesn't do anything, what happens? The ACLU then files an emergency application to the United States Supreme Court saying, Supreme Court, we tried in D.C., they said no jurisdiction. Judge Boasberg said no jurisdiction. Hey, Supreme Court, Judge Hendricks says he can't do anything. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal isn't responding. This can be imminent. We need you to do something. So the ACLU files with the Supreme Court, and then at 1 a.m. on Saturday, the Supreme Court responds. Let me read for you the order by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says the following. In the case of AARP et al. V. Trump, President of the United States et al., there is before the court an application on behalf of a putative class of detainees seeking an injunction against their removal under the Alien Enemies Act. The matter is currently pending before the Fifth Circuit. Upon action by the Fifth Circuit, the Solicitor General is invited to file a response to the application before this court as soon as possible. The government is directed not to remove any member of the putative class of detainees from the United States until further order of this court. Justice Thomas and Justice Alito dissent from the court's order. Statement from Justice Alito to follow. And as of this recording, I don't have Justice Alito's statement yet, but that means of the 9 justices, it appears 7 justices agreed with this injunctive relief, this stay for now, at least emergency stay. Do not send these detainees until you hear from us. We need to hear what the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is going to do. They haven't responded. Justice Thomas and Justice Alito, in a very scary way, they would allow these migrants to be sent to El Salvador. Let me just break down some of these words if that was like confusing to you. So basically, the summary of what that order I just read is the Supreme Court ordering the government, do not send this group, that's when they say putative class, this next batch of migrants, do not send them to El Salvador until further order of this court. So they're saying, stop, you can't do anything. We need to hear what the Fifth Circuit says. Then maybe it'll get appealed to the Supreme Court. Do not send these people. So that's basically what it says. But when you go through this order, just so you know what these words mean, it says this is before the court, the Supreme Court, on behalf of a putative class. That means the group, like a class action. This is the group of Venezuelans the Trump regime wants to send to El Salvador, seeking an injunction against their removal under the Alien Enemies Act. Injunction means block, stop. So this is a class action brought by the group of Venezuelans to stop being sent to El Salvador until they get processed. They're being represented by the ACLU. It then says this matter is currently pending before the Fifth Circuit. Why the Fifth Circuit? The Fifth Circuit is the court of appeals that oversees the Texas District Court judges. So why wouldn't it be in D.C.? In D.C., it's the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals oversees the federal court in D.C. And there, Judge Boasberg, the D.C. federal judge, said, I don't have jurisdiction. So Texas, unfortunately, is the right place for jurisdiction. Why? Because the detention centers in Texas, the Blue Bonnet Detention Center, which is where the migrants were sent, the Trump regime sent them there because they think also Texas is a more favorable forum for the litigation. But that's why this is happening in Texas. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is above the Northern District Judge of Texas. So then the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is above the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals as the supreme law of the land. So then it says, upon action by the Fifth Circuit, the Solicitor General is invited to file a response to the application before this court as soon as possible. What that means is, what I said earlier, the Fifth Circuit has not yet ruled on the ACLU's emergency petition. So what the Supreme Court is saying is, look, we don't know when the Fifth Circuit's going to respond, but when the Fifth Circuit responds, whatever they decide to do or not do, then the Solicitor General, which is the main lawyer for the Justice Department who argues before the Supreme Court, then you can file, once we hear what the Fifth Circuit does, then Solicitor General in the Trump regime, you can then file with us in the Supreme Court what your position is going to be. Then it says the government is directed not to remove any member of the putative class. The group of Venezuelans, do not move them from the United States until further order of this court. We're freezing the status quo in place, and that's the end of the story. So I know I broke it down there in a little bit. It's kind of how I would teach this in a law school class where I'm a professor. So I just wanted you to understand it all. But basically, the Supreme Court, in an emergency ruling at 1 a.m., blocked the Trump regime from sending this group of Venezuelan migrants, this next group, to the concentration camps until further order of the Supreme Court. I hope that broke down the complexity, what was going on in D.C. Judge Boasberg said, I don't have jurisdiction because of the other Supreme Court ruling from a few weeks back where they said he didn't have ruling over the case involving the migrants being sent to Venezuela. Then you had the Texas judge, federal court judge, on procedural grounds, not stopping the flight to Texas. The Fifth Circuit, the flight from Texas to El Salvador, the Fifth Circuit didn't do anything. So then the Supreme Court acted and blocked everything. That's the status. Hope you understand it better. We'll keep you posted every step of the way. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 5 million subscribers.
Can't get enough Midas? Check out the Midas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MidasPlus.com.